There is a quiet figure living inside many men. It is not visible in the mirror, yet it shapes decisions more than any outside force. It hesitates when pressure appears. It longs for approval from people whose respect means nothing. It prefers safety over authority and comfort over command. This version of you rarely shouts. It whispers. It nudges you toward the easier path, the agreeable answer, the harmless response that keeps everyone comfortable. The tragedy is that most men never recognize how much power this quiet voice steals from them. The greatest obstacle standing between a man and his potential is rarely another person. It is not bad timing, and it is not the absence of opportunity. The obstacle is the hidden hunger for comfort that quietly directs behavior. A man begins adjusting himself for acceptance. He softens his opinion so nobody feels challenged. He forgives patterns that deserve distance. He explains himself to people who never intended to understand him. Each small concession appears harmless, yet over time these concessions shrink his presence. The part of you that seeks comfort believes it is protecting you. It wants harmony. It wants to be liked. It urges you to stay quiet when confrontation is necessary and to smile when walking away would carry more dignity. It tells you that keeping the peace is a form of strength. Yet what it actually builds is submission disguised as kindness. The man you wish to become does not grow in environments where approval is the highest priority. He emerges from discipline, awareness, and the ability to control himself under pressure. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote that before anyone commands a city or leads a nation, he must first govern himself. Authority begins internally. If a man cannot master his impulses, his anger, and his insecurities, he cannot expect others to respect his presence. Self-command is the foundation from which every form of influence grows. The transformation begins with awareness. The most dangerous opponent you will ever encounter is not an enemy who confronts you openly. It is the version of yourself that quietly encourages retreat when tension appears. It hides in ordinary moments. It appears when you avoid difficult conversations because discomfort feels inconvenient. It appears when you dilute your opinion so the room remains agreeable. It appears when you sense disrespect but convince yourself it is not worth addressing. These decisions rarely feel dramatic. Each one seems minor in isolation, yet together they build a pattern. Over time, the pattern becomes identity. A man begins believing he is naturally agreeable, naturally cautious, naturally accommodating. In truth, he has simply trained himself to withdraw from friction. To dismantle this pattern, you must observe yourself the way a strategist studies a rival. Notice the instant when courage rises inside you and then disappears. There is always a brief moment when the stronger response becomes possible. Then the comfortable response replaces it. That moment reveals the inner conflict. The voice encouraging retreat will justify itself cleverly. It will argue that patience is wisdom. It will claim that timing is not ideal. Sometimes those claims are correct, but often they are excuses that disguise fear. The difference between patience and avoidance lies in intention. Ask yourself one unforgiving question whenever hesitation appears. Am I choosing this path because it strengthens my long-term position, or because it removes immediate tension? Relief is seductive. Authority demands endurance. Most men measure success only through outcomes. They look at whether they received the promotion, whether the conversation ended peacefully, whether the relationship continued. They rarely examine the behavioral patterns that produced those results. Patterns reveal where power is leaking. Observe your habits carefully. Do you soften your tone when speaking to dominant personalities? Do you smile excessively during serious discussions? Do you rush to fill silence because quiet moments feel uncomfortable? These reactions are not harmless personality quirks. They are signals that reveal uncertainty. A disciplined man identifies these signals and removes them deliberately. Begin reviewing conversations after they end. When you leave an interaction feeling smaller than before, replay the moment carefully. Where did your posture shift? When did your voice tighten? At what point did you surrender ground without noticing? This is not an exercise in self-criticism. It is an exercise in awareness. The inner weakness thrives in unconscious behavior. Once a pattern becomes visible, it begins losing its influence. Awareness alone disrupts the automatic responses that have guided your actions for years. There will be moments when the urge to explain yourself becomes overwhelming. You will feel pressure to justify your decisions, clarify your intentions, and make sure everyone understands your reasoning. Resist that impulse. Allow silence to remain. Sit inside the tension without rushing to escape it. That discomfort is training. Every time you choose composure instead of explanation, the old pattern weakens. The process is quiet and private. No audience celebrates the moment you choose restraint. No one applauds when you hold your ground calmly instead of retreating politely. Yet these moments accumulate. Each one dismantles the version of you that survived through approval-seeking rather than authority. For years, you may have operated in what could be called survival mode. Survival mode teaches you to blend into groups, avoid conflict, and minimize threats. These instincts helped you navigate environments where acceptance mattered. But survival mode cannot build leadership. It produces compliance, not command. Command requires a different posture. It requires clarity, composure, and the ability to endure tension without shrinking. The internal battlefield is unforgiving because it reveals the truth behind your decisions. It exposes how often comfort guided your behavior. It shows how frequently you sought reassurance from others. These realizations are not reasons for shame. They are starting points for change. Study yourself without judgment. Identify the reactions that weaken your presence. Then begin correcting them deliberately. Power begins the moment you stop deceiving yourself about why you behave the way you do. When hesitation rooted in fear disappears, decisions gain weight. When actions align with intention rather than anxiety, the room senses the difference. Your posture stabilizes, your voice carries more certainty. The hidden weakness loses ground each time you choose clarity over avoidance. This is the hunt. Quiet, relentless, deeply personal. The next transformation begins with mastering anger. Many men confuse aggression with strength. They raise their voices, slam doors, or fire off words the moment they feel challenged. In their minds, this looks like power. In reality, it exposes something far more dangerous. The moment another person can provoke your reaction whenever they choose, they gain access to your nervous system. Whoever controls your reactions controls your direction. The undisciplined man reacts instantly. The disciplined man absorbs the impact first. Whenever someone challenges you, disrespects you, or attempts to diminish your standing, a surge rises through your body. It feels urgent, almost electric. The instinct is to release it immediately, to respond, to prove something. But that urgency is the exact moment where power is decided. If you release it without control, you surrender the moment. If you contain it, you gain clarity. Calm under pressure disturbs people more than anger ever could. When someone expects retaliation and instead meets composure, the psychological balance shifts. The aggressor prepared for noise. Instead, they face stillness. That stillness forces them to question themselves. This is not emotional suppression. Suppression buries emotion until it poisons you from within. Discipline transforms it into awareness. When provoked, slow down internally. Notice the tone being used, the timing of the remark, the audience present. Ask yourself what the other person hopes to gain from your reaction. Many confrontations are not about truth. They are about extracting an emotional display that weakens your standing in front of others. Refuse to provide it. Observe instead. Every hostile remark reveals information. It exposes insecurities, ambitions, or strategies. When you remain calm, you begin collecting data. You see who becomes uncomfortable when you stay quiet. You notice who expects you to react. Emotional restraint converts chaos into intelligence. Another advantage emerges when you delay your response. Most people feel pressured to answer immediately. They believe silence means weakness. In reality, silence is a form of positioning. When you give yourself time, you move from impulse to strategy. A delayed answer often carries more weight than a quick defense. The men who are hardest to manipulate are those who refuse to react on command. Their responses arrive when they choose, not when others demand them. This unpredictability forces people to tread carefully. Predictable reactions are easy to control. Unpredictable ones create caution. Imagine steel placed into intense fire. If it collapses under the heat, it loses shape. If it holds structure while the heat surrounds it, it becomes stronger than before. Pressure itself is not the enemy. Lack of discipline under pressure is. Your objective is not to appear emotionless. It is to become steady. When insulted in front of others, maintain eye contact. Breathe slowly. Let silence remain long enough that discomfort shifts back toward the source of the attack. Then choose your response carefully. Sometimes the strongest answer is a calm statement. Sometimes it is none at all. Authority does not come from volume. It comes from certainty delivered without agitation. Passion is not the enemy either. Passion becomes dangerous only when it controls you. The mature man channels intensity into action rather than display. Instead of wasting energy on arguments, he invests that energy into growth, discipline, and advancement. Every time you refuse to explode emotionally, you reclaim territory inside yourself. But emotional control alone is not enough. Life inevitably brings rejection and betrayal. These moments break many men because they interpret them as proof of personal failure. When excluded or replaced, the immature mind asks a destructive question. It asks, "What is wrong with me?" That question drains confidence and weakens posture. A disciplined man asks a different question. What does this reveal? Rejection is rarely a measure of your worth. More often, it reflects perception. Someone else's judgment, priorities, or limited understanding shape the outcome. Instead of collapsing into wounded pride, step back and examine the situation carefully. Who made the decision? What incentives influenced them? What signals did you send? Where did your positioning lack weight? You are not collecting pain. You are collecting information. Betrayal carries even sharper lessons. When trust breaks, emotion surges instantly. Anger, disbelief, disappointment. The instinct is to react immediately or to cut someone off with dramatic finality. But reacting instantly wastes the lesson hidden beneath the experience. Pause first. Examine how the person gained access to your trust. Identify the boundaries that were unclear. Notice where generosity turned into vulnerability. This is not about becoming paranoid. It is about becoming precise. Every disappointment contains material that can strengthen you. Most people waste this material by replaying events repeatedly, fueling resentment instead of insight. Resentment burns energy without building strength. Strategic thinking converts the same experience into recalibration. Begin keeping a mental record of the assumptions people make about you. Who underestimated you? Who assumed you would remain stagnant? Who dismissed your potential? These assumptions are not wounds, they are fuel. There is something powerful about advancing quietly after being underestimated. When you improve silently and return stronger, the shift becomes undeniable. The people who once misjudged you sense it immediately. This is not revenge, it is evolution. Rejection also clarifies alignment. Not every opportunity belongs in your path. Not every relationship is meant to remain. Sometimes the removal of a connection is filtration rather than loss. Authority grows when you stop chasing what walks away. If an opportunity denies you, refine your abilities until you become difficult to overlook the next time. Growth is the most intimidating response to dismissal. When someone expects you to shrink and instead sees you sharpen your discipline, the psychological balance changes. Betrayal should also elevate your standards. Trust must be measured rather than blind. You can remain open without becoming naive. Strength does not mean avoiding pain. It means refusing to let pain dictate your behavior. Every scar can either shrink you or instruct you. Let disappointment refine your awareness instead of turning you bitter. Let betrayal sharpen your discernment instead of closing your heart. Your goal is not to be validated by everyone around you. Your goal is to build resilience that cannot be shaken by rejection. Those who underestimated you today may witness your rise later. Whether they acknowledge it or remain silent becomes irrelevant. What matters is that you converted friction into momentum. And once a man learns to turn pain into discipline instead of reaction, the world stops having the same power over him. Another transformation begins the moment you remove the social mask you have been wearing for years. Most men carry two versions of themselves. One exists in private, grounded and direct. The other appears in public, carefully adjusted to keep people comfortable. This version smiles on cue, agrees quickly, and reshapes its tone depending on who is watching. It was created to survive social environments, not to command them. Adaptation itself is not the problem. Intelligence requires the ability to read a room and adjust accordingly. The danger appears when your identity becomes dependent on approval. When every interaction becomes a performance designed to avoid tension, your center begins to disappear. You start editing your opinions before speaking them. You soften truths that might challenge someone. You laugh at things that do not amuse you simply to remain accepted. Each adjustment appears harmless, yet together they weaken presence. People sense this instinctively. They may never articulate it clearly, but they feel when someone is performing rather than standing firmly in themselves. Once that signal appears, authority fades. Influence drops. A man who constantly negotiates his identity for approval cannot hold power for long. The disciplined man does not perform. He presents himself. Presentation is stable. Performance is anxious. When you enter a room searching faces for validation, your posture becomes negotiable. Your attention shifts outward, waiting for signs that others approve. In that moment, your presence becomes dependent on external reactions. Strength moves differently. You enter with clarity about who you are and what you represent. Approval becomes irrelevant to your stability. Agreement becomes optional rather than necessary. This requires brutal honesty with yourself. Observe where you exaggerate stories to appear impressive. Notice where you soften statements to avoid disagreement. Pay attention to moments when you over-explain your decisions because silence feels uncomfortable. These behaviors seem small, but they slowly erode the solidity of your character. Authenticity does not mean aggression. It means alignment. You do not need to dominate every conversation. You do not need to challenge everyone you meet. What matters is that your words match your convictions. When your speech is no longer filtered through the need to please others, your voice gains weight. There is quiet power in saying less while meaning more. People listen differently when your words are not inflated with the desire to impress them. Statements become sharper. Silence between sentences becomes meaningful rather than awkward. Mystery strengthens presence as well. You do not owe anyone full access to your thoughts, your ambitions, or your plans. Oversharing often disguises itself as openness, but it frequently weakens influence. When everyone knows every detail of your intentions, unpredictability disappears. Unpredictability creates gravity. Restraint in what you reveal builds intrigue. Choose carefully what you disclose and when you disclose it. Allow certain aspects of your life to remain private. Silence used intentionally shifts the entire rhythm of interaction. Confidence rarely announces itself loudly. It exists quietly because it does not depend on constant reinforcement. If you notice yourself explaining the same decision repeatedly in search of understanding, pause. State your reasoning once with clarity, then stand by it. Repetition often signals doubt rather than strength. Removing the social mask may feel uncomfortable initially. Some people will resist the change because they were accustomed to your agreeable version. They may question why you seem different. Maintain steadiness. Over time, consistency will reshape their perception. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming clear. Clarity removes unnecessary noise from your interactions. It strengthens boundaries. It reduces the need for constant performance. When your behavior reflects conviction rather than compliance, your presence becomes heavier. Influence does not come from being universally liked. It grows from internal solidity. Another dimension of strength emerges through strategic absence. Many men believe constant visibility proves value. They answer every message immediately, appear everywhere they are invited, and make themselves available at all times. Without realizing it, they dilute their own presence. Scarcity creates weight. Overexposure creates familiarity. And familiarity without limits erodes respect. When you are constantly available, your presence becomes background noise. People stop anticipating your arrival. They assume access to your time. Assumption reduces status. Strategic absence corrects this imbalance. It is not withdrawal born from fear. It is deliberate distance chosen with intention. There are moments when stepping back increases influence far more than stepping forward. When conversations become chaotic, silence can redirect attention. When others grow dependent on your constant input, restraint reminds them of the value you bring. When someone expects instant replies, delayed responses establish boundaries. Distance restores gravity. If your time begins to be treated casually, reduce availability. If your attention is taken for granted, redirect it elsewhere. Presence must be intentional rather than habitual. When you appear less frequently, your arrival carries more significance. When you speak after listening longer than others, your words command attention. This principle extends beyond physical presence. It applies to communication, focus, and emotional investment. Do not overextend your energy toward people who have not earned it. Do not constantly announce your plans before they become reality. Let outcomes speak before explanations. Silence itself can be powerful. In negotiations and tense exchanges, the person who tolerates silence often guides the direction of the conversation. Those who rush to fill every pause surrender control. Those who remain composed during the pause invite others to reveal more than they intended. Absence also strengthens discipline. Distance from constant noise restores mental clarity. When you stop reacting to every external stimulus, your mind gains space for strategic thinking. You do not need to declare your distance publicly. Simply reduce unnecessary exposure. Use that recovered energy to improve yourself quietly. Train harder. Study more deeply. Strengthen your skills without announcing every step. When you eventually return sharper, calmer, and more composed, the contrast will speak louder than any declaration. Consistency of character combined with unpredictability of timing creates influence. Disappear when there is nothing to gain. Appear when the moment matters. That is the essence of strategic presence. The final transformation is inner sovereignty. Many men believe they are free simply because no one orders them around. Yet they remain ruled by impulses, moods, distractions, and external pressure. That is not freedom. That is chaos disguised as independence. Inner sovereignty begins the moment you stop negotiating with your lower instincts. When you promise yourself discipline and then break that promise, your internal authority weakens. When you set a boundary but abandon it to avoid discomfort, your credibility erodes. Each broken commitment teaches your mind that your own standards are optional. Self-rule demands consistency beyond emotion. You train when the schedule demands it, not only when motivation appears. You uphold your standards even when convenience encourages compromise. Discipline becomes identity rather than occasional effort. Create a personal code that defines how you operate. Decide how you respond under stress, how you treat your time, how you honor commitments. These standards must be clear rather than vague. Once defined, enforce them quietly. Each time you follow through, trust in yourself deepens. That trust builds stability. When challenges appear, you know you will not abandon your own structure. External pressure loses power over a man who governs himself. Some people will misunderstand this firmness. They may interpret discipline as arrogance or distance. Let them misinterpret it. Sovereignty is not built to satisfy observers. It exists to stabilize the person who lives by it. When your internal structure is strong, your presence changes naturally. Your movements slow. Your voice becomes steady. Decisions feel deliberate rather than reactive. Impulse weakens. Focus sharpens. Every day you honor your code, you reinforce self-respect. Every day you betray it, you weaken your authority. Sovereignty is not granted once. It is earned continuously. And when a man reaches the point where he governs himself completely, the world begins to respond differently to his presence.